Welcome to our June 2013 West Coast Vacation presentation. The majority of the photos and videos in this presentation were made on a Samsung Galaxy Note 2 and a Samsung Galaxy S3, with a few of the photos being made on a small Canon Power Shot. They were processed in Lightroom 4 and the video was compiled using Lightworks 11. The music following the introduction track is used with permission from David Hildebrandt's album Instrumental Classics. We left Saskatoon and traveled to Hinton, Alberta the first day, making it to Vancouver on the second day, where we stayed for 5 nights. We were pleasantly surprised at how luxurious our hotel, the Holiday Inn in North Vancouver, was. Lush grounds, beautiful flowers and plants, a fountain, and even a waterfall. Our room was the most spacious we've ever stayed in, and the accessibility was very intentional, not just meeting some arbitrary standards. The first attraction we visited on our first day in Vancouver was the Dr. Sun Yat-sen Classical Chinese Garden. It was such a peaceful place and such a contrast to the surrounding busyness of downtown. After the garden, we headed down to Canada Place and the waterfront to have a look around before stopping at the Lion's Head pub for lunch. We found some great parking at Granville Island, where we spent most of the afternoon. That evening, we arrived early for supper with Angie's cousin and her husband, so we checked out the downtown community garden before meeting them at Banana Leaf for some amazing Malaysian cuisine. Following supper, they took us to English Bay Beach for a walk, which completed our first day in Vancouver. The next day was all about vegetation. Solid white marble sculptures greeted us at the top of the hill in Queen Elizabeth Park. The view was just amazing, and the fragrances of all of the flowers were exhilarating. We ventured into the Bloedel Conservatory. It definitely trumped anything we had seen at the Mutart Conservatory in Edmonton or anywhere else. It was somewhat surreal to be walking around among tropical birds without any sort of cage or netting. This guy was even giving himself a good scratch and grooming with one of his own tail feathers. One more look from the top of the hill before we headed a few blocks west to the Van Dusen Botanical Garden for lunch. After lunch, we explored as much of the garden as we could in the accessible areas that were available. The temporary exhibit of the wood sculptures was on display while we were there. The sphere of wood, made up of multiple pieces of wood, lit up at night. We did not get to see that. Angie took a stroll by herself to check out the hedge maze while I took the time to make a few photos that took a bit longer than just the snapshots I was making while we explored together. After enjoying some relaxing time overlooking the pond at the gardens, we returned to Queen Elizabeth Park and the fish house for a really nice supper. Ever since watching Les Stroud catch and eat Arctic char on an episode of Survivor Man, I have wanted to try it. Ahi tuna has also been at the top of my list. Both of those were part of the trio of fish option on the menu that evening, alongside some beautiful salmon. It was the best meal of fish I have ever eaten. We finished the second day with a stroll along the seawall of the east coast portion of Stanley Park, overlooking the harbor. Our third day started at the Vancouver Aquarium, where the feature exhibits were jellyfish. As with most aquatic animals, they were very mesmerizing and peaceful to watch. However, both of us suggested that we would gladly pay a premium admission price for an adults-only viewing. In the bottom left of the next photo, you will see a type of coral called a sea pen that looks like a feather pen. It was one of the things that intrigued us the most at the aquarium. The camera did not capture the true beauty and color of the beluga whale making repeated laps around its tank. After the aquarium, we went to the Aberdeen Centre, a mall described as the closest thing to Hong Kong without actually going. Unfortunately, we were underwhelmed, but it was an interesting experience to be both one of the only white guys and in a wheelchair. We had lunch in the food court, which was ironically better than most of the Asian food we get in Saskatoon and a whole lot cheaper. Once we were done browsing stores, we sat by the fountain to watch a bit of the spray show it puts on every half hour while we figured out where we wanted to go next. Still being stuffed from our late lunch, we decided to seek out a coffee shop instead of somewhere for supper. At the recommendation of a friend, we went to Matchstick Coffee and had one of the best lattes we have ever had. While we were waiting for our drinks, I witnessed this scene outside and missed Kiwi for the first real time during our trip. The next day we attempted to find the Museum of Biodiversity at UBC, but our unreliable GPS couldn't get us there, so we settled for the Museum of Anthropology. We spent a little bit too much time in the historics ceramics section and were running low on parking meter time when we began getting into the more interesting stuff. A quick look at the interesting artifacts and remarkable number of masks, and we headed out for an incredible sushi lunch at Hito Sushi on Broadway in Kitsilano. In the afternoon we checked out a mall, had some bubble tea, and saw the only Samsung store in North America. The video doesn't do it justice, but this hill was unbelievably steep. We had to be a bit touristy and make a video of us driving up it. That was on our way for supper. We ended up at India Fusion for the best Indian food we have ever had. Huge piles of pakora, amazing dipping sauces, great decor. It will be hard to find that kind of food again. The next morning, it was time to head for the border. We stopped at an outlet mall where Angie picked up this lovely dress. As we got closer to Seattle, we started getting into the wide freeways and thicker traffic than I've ever driven in before. I have said it, decent drivers on fast roads don't bother me as much as the aggressive and oblivious drivers we have in Saskatoon. We had been excited about eating at the Cheesecake Factory until Angie's burger was undercooked, which put her in no mood to have cheesecake after that. On the way back to our hotel, we stopped for gas. There was Christmas wrapping paper in the garbage can, in June. We decided to get caught up on some rest, so late the next morning we made it to the zoo. We didn't have many shots from the zoo because a camera phone does not make for great photos at the zoo. Shopping continued the next morning at the original Costco, where we bought nothing but Velveeta cheese and some washcloths. After that, we visited the inaccurately named Super Mall. A somewhat boring day was finished off by an excellent meal back in Kirkland at Cactus Restaurant. You don't get good seafood Mexican here in Saskatoon. The next morning we went to Pike Place Market via the toll bridge. The amount of time, stress, and gas that we saved by taking the bridge was a lesson we wish we had learned a few days earlier. In fact, we still haven't received the bill for that toll bridge. Before that, however, we drove around in circles on those crazy brick roads down by the waterfront, but the GPS was not getting us where we needed to go. So I let my finely tuned male sense of direction take over and got us exactly where we wanted to be in about 3 minutes, finding parking right in front of the market. The things available for sale and the freshness of everything there was pretty impressive. I'm glad that we got there before it got really busy and wouldn't mind experiencing it again if it wasn't so tricky to get around for me down there. After Pike Place Market, we went to the Whale Winds for lunch. Definitely upscale, but very fresh with excellent service. Following lunch, we went for a stroll in Gasworks Park. That was probably the most level place we experienced in Seattle, and it was really nice to go for a stroll without needing Angie's assistance going forward or slowing down. This is the one photo from our trip that I had printed on aluminum. My phone's camera held up very nicely to being printed on metal. The previous evening when we were at Cactus for supper, we noticed Cafe Rococo and decided to give it a try for an afternoon drink and snack. Despite the great reviews on Urban Spoon, we weren't thrilled with it. We finished the day by cleaning up the snacks we had in our hotel room and enjoying the peaches we bought that day at Pike Place Market. The big day had come, my opportunity to hopefully meet Chase Jarvis. We were invited to his studio for a barbecue where we got to meet his wife and the crew and enjoy a tour. Unfortunately, Chase couldn't be there, but it was still a huge highlight of our vacation for me. After that, we went downtown by the Space Needle to explore. We made our way into the Chihuly Garden and Glass Museum. It was amazing to see all of the work that one man had done, one piece of blown glass at a time. We went back to our favorite street in Kirkland for some Thai food at Lai Thai, which concluded our time in Seattle. The next morning we took our leisurely time heading out since we only had to make it to Spokane. The terrain was not so different from west to east as it would be in Canada, but there was quite a bit of diversity in what we drove through in just 6 hours on the road. Since we had some time to kill, we decided to check out Walmart. We started planning what we would buy in Great Falls before the final stretch to the border and some relaxation time at the lake. We arrived back in Saskatoon, picked up our overly excited dog, and arrived home to this in the mail. Originally, there was supposed to be an episode of Chase Jarvis Live that we were going to be audience members of. Since it got cancelled, they invited us to the barbecue I spoke about earlier and sent me a signed copy of Chase's book, which arrived in the mail while we were away. And that concludes our vacation presentation. Thank you for watching.